When it comes to systems, you want something that will start showing results fast. You're looking for a tool that can enable your 3PL or warehouse to get to the next level. So why wait? That's why Carton Cloud provides supported, fast onboarding that can have your WMS up and running in hours, not months. Jump into Carton Cloud's easy-to-use workflows for all of your services, including cross-docking, serialized inventory tracking, e-commerce order fulfillment, and more. This software is built by logistics people for logistics people, and those logistics people are standing by to help train you and support you so that you can be successful with your customer. With 24/7 real-time reporting and free online training, you need to check out Carton Cloud for your operation. Take the next step in your operation by heading to cartoncloud.com/free-demo or click the link in the show notes.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Nicole Allison, and she is the Regional Sales Manager over at Geek Plus, and we're going to talk all about Geek Plus. We haven't had Geek Plus on the podcast actually before, so we're going to talk about all their broad range of offerings, and we're going to talk about some of the challenges within the automation market right now that Nicole's seeing out there. And we're also going to talk to kind of considerations around ergonomics when it comes into putting in and implementing these types of solutions, which I think is going to be an interesting conversation. So, Nicole, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to get you on. Good to get Geek Plus representation on here as well. So why don't you give us kind of a brief overview of Geek Plus to start for maybe people that are not familiar or haven't heard of Geek Plus before?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Geek Plus is a global automation provider specializing in goods-to-person technology primarily. We've been around for about 10 years now, and since that time, we have become the world market share leader in autonomous mobile robots, and that's been the case for the past 5 consecutive years.
Very nice. Definitely. Good thing to say for sure. Good thing to brag about. So, as we look at the market and, Geek Plus obviously has been around for a while, as you just mentioned, and as one of the global leaders, I'm sure seeing a lot of things that are going on within the market. So, when you look at the market itself and you're talking to either existing customers or potential customers, I mean, what are some of the top challenges that some of these organizations are looking to address with automation right now in the current market?
I would say the primary challenge that we're looking to solve for with automation here at Geek Plus is definitely labor. And that means finding labor, retaining labor, training employees, keeping them productive, and also keeping them working in a happy and safe and ergonomic environment.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think the labor challenge has certainly been ongoing and certainly, spiked during the pandemic and has been, an ongoing challenge for quite some time now. I mean, do you see that the challenge is just going to be, is it no longer necessarily a challenge? It's just the status quo that, people are just, less and less wanting to work within a warehouse type of environment?
100%. I think these challenges always existed, but they're definitely brought to the forefront since the pandemic. Mm-hmm. The labor workforce has just become so uncertain, and there's just been so much uncertainty in the supply chain in general. But labor is the largest component of any customer's business, accounting for about 70% of their total operating costs. So anything we can do to maintain labor or make the jobs a bit easier for the employees at the warehouse, that's our main problem that we're solving for.
Yeah. And I think it's really kind of insightful to hear that, especially that, people are trying to navigate this. And I'm curious, from Geek Plus perspective, I guess your perspective, you guys have kind of a broad offering of different solutions, different kind of, I guess, forms of your robotics and solutions that you offer. Now, as you look at that and people are looking to address these labor challenges, I mean, how does having, a bunch of different form factors and solutions to offer to the customer, and how does that help the customer kind of get a more comprehensive solution when they work with you and address, not just labor concerns in a specific department, but maybe multiple different departments within their operation?
Yeah, absolutely. Geek Plus is fortunate to have the largest portfolio of robots for goods to person technology on the market. We're able to do shelves to person, totes to person, and now pallets to person solutions, meaning we can handle most all products inside the warehouse. And the ability to have that system running on a single software platform is very beneficial. We also have robotic solutions to buffer those systems. So we have moving robots and sorting robots that are able to connect and buffer those systems. That's why we refer to ourselves as a solution provider, because we can handle multiple different applications in the warehouse.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, having those different offerings is certainly super helpful, because obviously there's different use cases in all different types of operations, the way people do certain things. And you have different departments as well where, different types of movements need to happen. I'm curious, is there a specific process or part of the operational flow that is getting a lot of attention from your customers or inquiring potential customers right now?
Yeah, absolutely. We see a lot of ROI in automating the picking process. Reason being, learning the warehouse is quite difficult. Warehouses are very sizable, and learning all those different dynamic locations is a huge pain. And then getting on a forklift requires being trained on a forklift, which is quite time consuming, and or picking to a cart or pushing to a cart isn't the most ergonomic way to pick product. So what Geek Plus emphasizes is goods to person. And what I mean by that is that the operator is able to stay completely stationary, and then we bring the goods autonomously to them that are needed to fulfill an order. But we also take it a step further. We also store all the products in the warehouse intelligently, meaning that if we see a certain product is ordered together with another type of product often, for example, like a red shoe and a red handbag, we'll put those items together on the same shelf or in the same tote, what have you. That way, our system continues to optimize the more that you use it.
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's interesting too that you mentioned the system aspect there, because if you look at it, like you said, intelligently storing stuff like a red handbag and a red pair of shoes together, right? I guess that's something that's important. And so, having those things together and then, making them closer together, and obviously, making that pick a little faster by doing that. How important, I guess, is we look at, there's, obviously tons of robotic solutions out there, but at the end of the day, I mean, how important is kind of having the right system behind those solutions and what's driving those solutions to make things better and optimize more? I mean, how important is that to consider and have within that overall implementation?
I would say it's hugely important. I mean, the hardware is one component of the process, but it's really the software that drives the solution. So our software, we use our own proprietary systems, but we're looking at order data and continuing to optimize based on several different factors, such as correlation. Again, that red shoe and red handbag, are they ordered together a lot? Also weight. So we want to store heavier products towards the bottom of whatever system that we're doing. And also just your typical ABCD SKU velocity. We'll bring the A movers closer to the workstation or on the lower levels of the system, and put the D movers closer to the top or towards the back of the system. It's like we're reslotting your warehouse every time we're putting product away into one of our automated solutions.
Interesting. And then it's just doing that automatically. Like there's no necessarily input or feedback that's needed from an operations perspective. Like, Because typically, without automation, you're having to move these products around, make decisions around slotting and stuff like that. And just kind of capturing the data over time and understanding to make these moves to be able to enable those things.
Everything is directed put away and also directed picking. So a lot of times in the warehouse, in manual picking operations, you see operators having to make judgment calls. Say that this pallet, it's almost depleted of material and there's another pallet next to it that has some space. Maybe I can consolidate those two locations and then that has to be recorded. But that's a very manual process. And it's also, again, a judgment call and something that someone has to do out in the field, whereas we just do that automatically. So again, we're seeing a huge uptick in the ROI, especially in picking times and picking productivity, sometimes getting 2, 3, even 4x the current manual picking rates.
Interesting. And that's great improvement too on the picking rate there. And it sounds like, you're thinking about the human element that's involved within the processes as well, which even through automation, I mean, you're taking away a lot of that, like judgment calls, like you mentioned there on the floor, right? Which I think is a good thing because, somebody may say that, oh, this product is not going to quite fit here, or maybe I should just move it over here. And then it's, throwing off the whole plan of everything in some way. But, as you look at that, and you kind of mentioned this before on the ergonomics too, I mean, you very much still have a human element involved in automation from the picking process. You're just taking things kind of in a way to improve their ability to have better throughput and productivity. But talk to us a little bit about the consideration for ergonomics for these humans that are still involved in the process and how that goes into developing your solutions.
Absolutely. Ergonomics, I would say, is one of the primary factors in our solution design and our product development. Just the goods to person methodology itself and having that operator stay stationary is key. But also inside of that work cell, everything is brought to the operator at exactly ergonomic pick height, and that can be adjusted. Also for the put, everything is put to light technology, so no guesswork, very simple interface. The UI of our system is very easy. We work with a lot of customers that have warehouses and really dense areas where there's a lot of warehouses. There's a lot of competition for labor, and also a lot of different languages spoken on the warehouse floor. Our system is very intuitive and can be programmed to be compatible with different languages, but honestly, it's so intuitive that it's really just shapes and numbers and letters. The day the person is hired, typically they can be on the warehouse floor and picking.
Interesting. And that user interface, I mean, talk to us about that too, because I think that's becoming such an important thing. You mentioned the competition there, and I'm in New Jersey here, and it's super densely populated with warehouses like everywhere, and it is super competitive. Like I know when I was a warehouse manager here and trying to hire somebody, and going into work, and you see a sign, somebody's now $1.50 more an hour, and you're like, oh my god, like I'm going to lose employees. And so, I mean, right. How do you kind of take that into account? And you mentioned the user interface there. I mean, how do you make sure that user interface is one that's not frustrating? It's one that's not challenging for the employee, because, if the employee gets frustrated and, they know there's somewhere that has better tech that's easier to use and things like that, they might jump ship. So how do you kind of take that into account, and how do you keep kind of iterating and making sure that it's keeping up to date with like what people are used to now with all the technology we're surrounded by?
Absolutely. If you just look at our screen, our display screens in our work cells, it's just very simple to be able to tell what's going on. Even if you're not familiar with our systems, for example, it'll show the location on the shelf that you're supposed to be picking from. And with the put to light, it shows exactly where to put that item. And it's very easy process flow. So we work hand in hand with our customers after the system is deployed and receiving their feedback about the different workflows or different process improvements. We're continuously making upgrades to our system, taking those elements into account.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because, our lives and, especially the newer generations like coming up too as well are just growing up like digitally native with everything around them. So like coming into the workplace and having, that user interface be super simple and, akin to what we're used to on a smartphone or something like that, like easy to navigate, I think is super important for that retention and for that employee just satisfaction and well-being overall, right? And it's very interesting how you're taking that into consideration and also the ergonomic standpoint as well. And now I'm curious too about, because you guys have a broad offering of solutions like we talked about. You mentioned, you have the most out there, or I forget what the stat was, you said something like that, but there's lots out there, and it's not necessarily where obviously companies would like for organizations come to them and say, do all my automation for me. But there's different processes, there's different nuances where they may run into situations where they need to use something from Geek Plus, and then maybe they need to use something from a different company as well. But at the end of the day, all of that kind of needs to communicate with each other. So I'm curious, how does Geek Plus kind of approach interoperability and partnerships with other robotics companies as well to make sure that, customers can have those kind of non-interrupted workflows and all that communication can happen together?
Absolutely. So a lot of the systems that we deploy are in brownfield operations. And as you know, those can't be shut down.
Yeah.
And so that does require us integrating with sometimes like downstream solutions such as conveyor systems, or they might have a sortation system already, and we're tasked to integrate with that. And that's something that we do quite often. Also, our approach to automation is flexible and scalable. So say the customer would like to start with perhaps their fastest e-commerce SKUs and then grow the system from there, we're able to do so. It's really just as simple as laying down more QR codes and providing the customer more robots and workstations. Also, the good thing about Geek Plus is that we can move our systems, which not a lot of people can do. So if you're moving warehouses, you can take these systems with you and redeploy them. I've also seen our robots move their picking operation to another side of the warehouse, which happens quite often. Oftentimes customers lease the other side of the building, or they have a new customer coming in if they're a 3PL. So our customers really do appreciate the flexibility that Geek Plus provides.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that flexibility is super important, and being able to move or adjust as you need it. And you mentioned in there too about, where a customer kind of wants to start with their automation, right? Whether they're going into brownfield or greenfield, whatever the case may be. But, I think that's a great point there. I mean, how do you recommend when you talk to customers who are just starting out thinking about automation or bringing robotics into their operation? How do you recommend that they kind of start maybe to, I guess, get their feet wet a little bit in the robot world? I mean, what's really that starting point that you recommend?
Absolutely. We have a very consultative approach. So I do recommend just engaging with our team and showcasing what are your challenges and being quite open with us. We also do quite a lot of data analysis with the customer to really determine, hey, where are we going to see the most ROI and where is a good place to start? And that might not be the same between customers, right? That might differ quite a bit. We do see a lot of our customers starting with their picking and automating that. But sometimes we do start with automating moving just point to point, like pallet movements or just parcel movements. Sorting downstream is something that we also do. But it's really dependent on the warehouse and the operation and what we're seeing there.
Interesting. And what would you say, I mean, along those lines too, I mean, what do you see like maybe most often is like the place to start? Like what's the low hanging fruit to really like automate something?
Absolutely. Definitely picking is probably the primary one.
Yeah.
Especially we're seeing a huge uptick in our high bay totes to person solution called Robo Shuttle. Reason being, it makes great use of that vertical cube, and it's an ergonomic solution with a tote being brought right to ergonomic pick height for the operator.
Interesting. Yeah. I was curious about that because it is kind of, I think, if we go to like Modex, for example, or something, like you walk in there and if you don't have any sense of automation or robotics yet, you're just starting to think about it. Like, I feel like, you would just be like overwhelmed with like, there's so much going on, like so many options, like where do I start? So I appreciate you kind of giving a little bit of that guidance and insight there on what to look at or how to go about it. And I think that the consultative approach that you mentioned too is a great way to try and assess and see where the needs are initially and how to grow upon that too and down the road as well. So as we look to kind of the future of things within the industry, I'm curious, what do you think is looking like the future of automation and robotics in our space? And I guess what's the future of Geek Plus as well? What can we look forward to?
Well, with Geek Plus, I think our primary goal right now is expanding our footprint in the Americas. We've only been in the Americas for about 5 years, but since that time, our number of projects has grown exponentially year over year. This type of automation is actually becoming very commonplace. So if a customer isn't already thinking about it, they're engaging with some of our vendors or deploying these solutions. I see the future for Geek Plus is becoming more involved on what happens downstream, right? So we are able to provide these really, really fast picking rates. Is that done with a batch pick? And if so, what's our sorting solution look like downstream? And we do have some, and they're quite good, but we're always looking at making those faster and more agile.
Very interesting. And I think we'll be looking forward to that definitely, to see kind of the continued evolution, how that expansion comes into the Americas as well. And also just how you continue to evolve and come up with new iterations, especially from like the human element side too. We talked about today a little bit, and the user interface and the ergonomics. And I love that you're taking all that into account to make a really great solution for your end customer and the end user that's actually interacting with the robots every single day from that perspective as well. And I think also, if we look to the future too, I heard that you guys may be having an innovation center opening somewhere around Atlanta, I think. Give us some details there.
So we are launching or doing a grand opening of our innovation center. It's near Atlanta. We're actually located in Johns Creek,
okay.
But that's slated to happen early fall. So please stay tuned about those dates. We'd like to have anyone in the industry there. Be a great way to see all of our systems live. Also, a great source of information is our YouTube channel. If you just Google Geek Plus in YouTube, it'll pop right up. We're posting content every single day. We have some great videos out there. It's a great way to see our current clients and what people are doing out in the market. And also our LinkedIn page. We post a lot of content there as well.
All right. Awesome. And posting content every day, trying to keep up with you guys. Yeah. So very interesting to learn about Geek Plus here and dive into a little bit about what you're offering in the space and also your approach to these automation and solution projects as well. And we'll certainly be looking out for the grand opening of the Innovation Center. I definitely want to check it out. I love a good Innovation Center. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for that. And what's the website? What's the best way to get to more information?
Really straightforward. It's geekplus.com.
All right. Easy enough. And we'll definitely put all that information, links to the YouTube channel, LinkedIn, their website as well at thenewwarehouse.com so people can easily find it. So Nicole, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.